funding these two wars. We want to go straight to White House correspondent Elaine Quijano, who is standing by for the very latest on all of this. Elaine, what will the money be used for? Is there any breakdown of this figure?
Not yet, but what we can tell you, as you just reported, a senior administration official telling CNN that, in fact, when the president's budget comes out on Monday, as you noted, there will be a request there for an extra $100 billion in funding this year for Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as $145 billion for the year 2008. Now, certainly this coming at a time when there is a great deal of attention on the situation on the ground in Iraq. Today, of course, just a couple of hours ago, we learned about the declassified key judgments of the National Intelligence Estimate on Iraq, painting a very bleak picture of the situation on the ground there. In fact, the President's National Security Advisor, Stephen Hadley, just wrapped up a briefing on this on camera just a short time ago. Let's take a listen to some of what he had to say.
It shows, and the President clearly understands, that it is clearly a difficult, challenging, and complex situation on the ground in Iraq. This is not a simple problem. And we came to that is to say, the President came to the same conclusion, that unless efforts to reverse these conditions in Iraq show measurable progress in the coming 12 to 18 months, the overall security situation will deteriorate.
And Heidi, as we've been reporting all day today, what this National Intelligence Estimate, the declassified key judgment, illustrate is that in the opinion, the collective view of the intelligence community, the 16 intelligence agencies in the United States, that in fact they believe that the primary source of conflict in Iraq, not Al-Qaeda, but rather the sectarian violence and the sectarian divisions that continue to exist in Iraq. But it's interesting to note, Stephen Hadley was pressed on the question of whether or not the president would be ready now to call the situation in Iraq a civil war, because this estimate does talk about the term civil war, accurately describing key elements of the Iraqi conflict. At the same time, Stephen Hadley pointing out that also in this estimate, Heidi, the intelligence community judges that the term civil war doesn't encompass the full picture because, for instance, they say there is Shia on Shia violence, and so the term civil war is still in question. Nevertheless, Stephen Hadley refusing to use that word civil war to describe what is taking place there, but certainly this coming at a time when the president is trying to convince skeptics, of course, on Capitol Hill that his plan for more U.S. troops in Iraq can work. Interesting to note, Heidi, that while the key judgments do talk about the consequences, possible consequences of rapidly withdrawing coalition forces, it does not talk about the possible consequences of adding U.S. forces. As you know, the president has in mind sending some 21,000 plus U.S. forces to pacify Baghdad and the Al-Anbar province. But certainly this will be continue to be examined here. This out now just a few hours. Heidi?
Yeah, and another key judgment, wondering about what's being said about this, if anything, Elaine, when we talk about this Iraqi violence, that really being the primary source of conflict there, there's also something written about the administration expressing deep uncertainty about Iraqi leaders' abilities to overcome the sectarian interests and where they lie politically. That speaks directly to Nouri al-Maliki, does it not?
Absolutely, and what we should note, of course, is that this particular document was developed by the intelligence community in essence to inform those policymakers, like the president and, of course, his top advisors. So what this is their view of the difficulties politically that the Iraqis themselves are facing. And as you note, there is, in fact, a great deal of skepticism expressed in this report about the ability, even if the violence in Iraq is somehow stabilized, if it's diminished, whether or not a political reconciliation among these various factions, the Shia, the Kurds, the Sunnis, can really take place. There is skepticism expressed in this, and skepticism echoed, frankly, by the President's National Security Advisor, Stephen Hadley. At the same time, his response to that is that the administration and the President himself, privately and publicly, have made very clear that, in fact, to Nouri al-Maliki, that this is the time for him and his government to step up, to really come through here, making very clear that the stakes are quite high. Heidi?
Elaine Quijano reporting live for us on those key judgments that have been declassified from the new National Intelligence Estimate. You see the cover of it there. Prospects for Iraq's stability, a challenging road ahead. Elaine, thanks so much.
We are going to take a quick break. When we come back,